I knew people suffered and had sad stories, but until I had my own, I didn't get a lot of things. Meanwhile, I had started dating my future husband. He was a solid guy, reliable provider, was healthy, and seemed to love me. We got married in a small ceremony with just our parents present. We had rented a cottage on one of the Gulf Islands and had a blissful 2 weeks there. We drove there straight from the reception, and I couldn't have been happier. A couple months later, after trying and trying, I suspected I was pregnant. Just the thought of it filled me with fear and wonder. I felt like my story was about to start and hoped the life experience would inspire my writing and give me a deeper understanding of human emotions, the kind that good writers and artists seem to have. At 5 months, we went for an ultrasound. And while my husband did not want to find out the sex, I did. When the ultrasound technician said, "It's not 100%, but if I was a betting man, I would bet that's a girl you've got in there." Everything made sense. I had gotten my girl. 4 months later, I had pushed out a screaming ginger-haired lass that made my heart burst every time I looked at her. At 16, she was diagnosed with depression, and we made the difficult decision to put her on antidepressants. It took a few months on the pills, but she seemed happier. She had never had a lot of friends, but the friends she did have were good ones. I woke up on an average Tuesday, shortly after we were trying her off the drugs again, and went to work. That day I had finished early and driven home from work to find the front door unlocked. It instantly put me on edge and gave me the chills. I called out, "Hello, anyone home?" I brushed the thought of a burglar aside and headed up the stairs. When I saw my daughter's door slightly open, I pushed it open all the way. What I saw changed me forever. She was lying on the floor with blue lips and was clearly dead. I flew at her, shook her, yelled, cried, screamed, howled. I called 911 and frantically looked around for a clue to what happened. My eyes fell on an envelope peeking out from under the bed. I opened the envelope, read what was inside, and what it said shocked me to my core. I couldn't believe that after getting the daughter I always wanted and secretly considered my miracle and life's best surprise, that she was taken from me. I had watched her struggle for years leading up to that Tuesday I found her dead on the shag carpet of her bedroom floor. Depression was a beast. So many people suffer from it or through it in silence. Obviously, we knew Cora was depressed. She'd been on and off antidepressants, and we were never sure if it was worse for her to be on them or off them. When I found her that afternoon, she was off them as her doctor had suggested we try to wean her off the pills. At that moment, I felt like we had failed her, like I had failed her. I supported her and was close to her, but I didn't really understand what was going on inside her mind and wasn't even sure if she did. When it came to her depressed funks, those were really hard to understand. I had always been a very emotionally even person. Don't get me wrong, I definitely had my meltdowns, stress ball moments, and emotionally hormonal times, but in general, I was solid emotionally speaking. I never really got people whose moods were so up and down. It was somewhat of a mystery to me. I always talked to her about how she was feeling, and try as I might, I couldn't understand it. I would walk out of our house, look up at the sky and the beautiful trees and sun shining on everything, and wonder what that same picture or moments looked like to someone who is depressed. Would it look less something, not as bright or beautiful? Or would it look the same but just feel different? That's what I came to understand how being depressed feels a bit. Like you can look at a scene or a moment in life and think, this looks pretty, but that there's a disconnect, and the scene just almost seems to have a gray overtone. I thought I understood how Cora saw the world when she was down, but when I found her that day, and then saw her secret letter and read it, I realized I had no clue what she was going through and how hard everything was. Her letter was a goodbye to life. She had taken an overdose of painkillers she had found of my husband's. I don't even remember what they were for and didn't know where she had found them. I was very careful with keeping all medication or potentially dangerous drugs out of reach of the kids in the house. She had found them somewhere, though. Her letter had a general goodbye to her few core friends. As I had said, she didn't have a lot of friends, but had a few really good, close friends. She talked about how she appreciated their support over the years, but that she knew they didn't really understand her and found it all a bit heavy. She figured they could have more fun going out and stuff without her dragging them down. That really broke my heart. How could she ever doubt that her friends loved her and wanted her around? It sounded like she really thought everyone would be better off without her. I had recently joined her in a support group for depressed teens, and she had a few parting words for a couple of kids she had built connections with. Her goodbye to me was heartbreaking. She said she appreciated all my efforts too, but that she felt like she was getting worse and didn't want to burden me. She said she saw how much time and energy and emotion I spent on dealing with her sickness, and that it just saddened her more to see it. To think all this time, it never occurred to me that she would feel like such a burden, or a burden at all. I knew that none of us saw her like that, but that was a light bulb moment for me. I finally got how far out of reach someone's view of their world can be when they're looking at it through the haze of depression. I had the awful moment of having to tell her dad and the boys, and it was unforgettable. They looked at me like I was playing some cruel joke on them. I could see it in their eyes, the disbelief that passionate, feisty Ginger sister and daughter was gone. Telling them the detail of it being suicide was even harder. Seeing that moment, the moment I had had to, where all the guilt of being unaware hits you like a wave. Each one of us would carry guilt that we weren't more, weren't enough, didn't know how bad things were for her. I vowed to myself that as gutted as I was, I would do my very best to make sure the boys were handling and processing it well. I wanted to really be a safe place for them to grieve. As the months went forward, we all talked about Cora as much as we can. At first, my oldest wouldn't say her name, would never talk about her, and I knew that was trouble. It took a lot of gauging his emotions to be able to get him to the point that he could talk about her and be okay. She was so precious, so special. Knowing from reading her secret letter that she really thought because of her battle, she was a burden on everyone was heartbreaking. Well, I thought to myself one day when I was sitting on Cora's bed clutching her favorite book from when she was small, "You got your story now." I had my story, and it was a sad one. I had wanted to know the depths of suffering, and now I wanted to forget. I did start writing about it to help process my own guilt and sadness, and it made me realize that being there for people and a safe place to grieve when they're at their lowest point of their lives is a pretty special thing. I decided to become certified as a grief counselor, and to this day, that is what I do. I help people face their sadness about losing loved ones, or any other kind of sadness or big change. I listen to a lot of sad stories. People have said, "How can you do that job? Isn't it depressing?" I usually just smile and shrug it off with a, "Haha, it can be." Really, it was uplifting to me. It was uplifting because I, too, felt that crippling grief that sometimes takes your breath away. Being there to help other people through, that was a selfish thing for me. I did it because it lessened my own grief. It made me feel like I was doing something good for Cora's memory, for myself and for others. I started speaking at schools and different organizations about handling grief. It was a career path I most definitely had not seen myself on. Had I not lived through something horrible, I wouldn't have even thought of it as something I would want to do. In a way, Cora had given me a gift. She had opened up a part in me that I couldn't access before. Empathy. True empathy is tricky to get. Sure, you can be sympathetic, say things like, "Oh, such a shame," and gently shake your head. But actually getting how people feel is pretty unique. I had started a blog 6 months after Cora died, and it was doing well. It was about suicide, grief, how to lean on the support system available, and how to try and keep on living until you actually wanted to live again. Looking back, I can see a big path. What if I had never had Cora? What if that surprise girl hadn't arrived on that fateful day? I don't even know who I would be. Just as she transformed me with her arrival into this world, her exit left me equally moved. The grief and sadness of her struggle and death changed me again. The veil had been lifted. I knew what it was like to look at the world through someone who's experienced true loss. Cora's good friends came to visit me often. We would talk about Cora, share memories, and try and find some happiness in each other's company, rather than sadness at each of us reminding the other of Cora. I knew this was a healthy way for all of us to face our grief. Cora's brothers went on with their lives. They found happiness and carried their sadness with them. As time passed, I was sure they thought of her less. Holidays were hard, birthdays, a lot of days held special reminders. Cora's dad and I ended up splitting up. Losing a child is hard on a marriage, and the loss shifted everything for me. It made me realize how precious life is and how important it is to truly love the person you spend the most time with. He went on to find someone else shortly after the divorce, and I'm here for my boys and myself, and the people I try to help through my speaking, writing, and counseling. To watch more animated story videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And tell us in the comments section what you thought about this story.